.34, morning to you. She's very cheeky, this one. Elle Costello. Who'd have thought it? This is Breakfast with Stephen Early, live across the UK on your TV and on your radio and online. I was asking you earlier on what you thought about renting a coffin. I know it's a bit of a depressing subject in a way. But no, it's true. Because apparently it's and it saves you about 500 quid. They put you in a cardboard box and put that in the coffin and then lift it all out. A few people are getting in touch. Elaine in Swindon says it makes perfect sense to rent a coffin. Why haven't we thought of it before? Especially for cremations. I've always wondered if the coffin gets cremated as well as the deceased. Yes, they do. Please put me in a cardboard box and burn me when I die. Elaine. I like the practical approach to it because we've all got to deal with it. Michael in Gloucester and Joan have also been in touch on this about relatives who've had cardboard coffins. I think it's a pretty sensible idea, to be honest.
I don't like the idea of being buried in a cardboard box. I just don't know if that's it to me. Do you like it? Would you do it? Doesn't bother you?
I think all the worms would get in quickly.
Well, they're going to get in anyway. They're going to get in
I think that's what, yeah.
At least, you know, you'll have rotted away by the time you get through the wood, but with a cardboard box, glory, it'd be mush, wouldn't it, by the time it's in the ground?
Well, it doesn't matter.
It's better for the environment, Mike, though.
Exactly.
It's so much better for the environment.
Well, it might be better for the environment below ground, but we're only worried about the environment above ground, aren't we?
No.
Oh, it's all an ecosystem.
As you can tell, Mike Parry and Nikki Hodgson are here. They're going to take us through the papers in a couple of minutes. But before you two properly kick off, let's have a look at the front pages, should we? We'll start with the Sunday Telegraph. Focuses on the Porngate scandal as Neil Parish resigned as an MP yesterday. It also says the Conservative Party has pledged that half of its MPs at the next election will be women.
The Sunday Mirror leads with the headline, I had Monster Belfield's secret son. It reports that the killer of Millie Dowler fathered a son weeks before committing the murder.
Sunday Express has Putin's army of saboteurs targeting Britain. Sources tell the paper MI5 has been tasked to increase the monitoring of people arriving in the UK.
The Mail on Sunday claims that Labour has made a secret agreement with the Lib Dems to sway the local election results.
The mother of James Bolger, who was killed by two teenagers in 1993, has spoken to the Sunday People, saying she only has 2 weeks to keep her son's killer behind bars.
It's time to go through the papers now, and joining us this morning is Nikki Hodgson and Mike Parry. Nikki, let's start with you. Obviously, the Neil Parish story all over the front of the newspapers today. And the Tories are saying half of all MPs will be women. They're hoping. What do you think about this?
Candidates, at least, I guess.
Yeah. So, obviously, Partygate has turned into Porngate. I mean, could it have got any worse than Boris Johnson? Don't know. Probably could have done, actually. Considering that, wasn't there an inquiry done into the House of Commons computers that found actually a large swathe of them had pornographic images on? This was a couple of years ago. So, anyway, back to this...
I sort of think if they did that in any office...
I think they would too, actually. I think they would too. I suppose, so what they're saying is that, Oliver Dowden's saying, the Tory party doesn't reflect the makeup of Britain. We only have a quarter of our MPs that are female. It should be half. With Labour, it's more than half of all MPs are actually female. So, why has it taken so much for them to catch up? The problem with that is that he's effectively saying that he needs women to be the moral arbiters of the men in the Tory party.
See?
Well, it sounds like it, because if he thinks that just by virtue of having women, people's behaviour will improve. I mean, that's a very Victorian idea that we need women around us to behave better.
I thought it was, but can't be arguing it's all about equality?
Well, he is, but he's trying to give people reassurance that if there are more women around, then things will be better for women.
I think it's total inequality. Discrimination of the very worst kind, because what this suggests, and I'm a male, okay, I'm a male gentleman of a certain age, half of our MPs will be women's age. Does that mean that men can't be trusted now in Parliament? Therefore, we've got to reduce their numbers. I mean, the behaviour of this man who's now resigned, the Tiverton guy, what's his name, Neil Parish, it was absolutely disgusting. But I've never watched pornography on a machine or anywhere else. I have never, in a working career within the media, in busy offices and newsrooms and studios, I've never had a problem with misogyny from myself or anybody else. And I think the idea now that, the only way you can balance up a workplace is to make sure there's 50% men and 50% women. I'm sorry, you give people jobs on the merit of their ability to do the job.
But Mike, don't you think it's peculiar that the Labour Party has more than half of its MPs women and the Tory party only has a quarter? Don't you think that's that's peculiar, and we should unpack that. Especially when women are making up half the population. Why aren't they half the workforce?
I tell you what strikes me with that, and it's only because I was thinking about it the other day, and you think, oh, well, there was a big intake of female Labour MPs
Under Tony
in
Blair.
1997.
Blair's babes, yeah.
Blair's babes?
Yes.
If that's not a misogynistic term, what is?
Well, we don't use that anymore, but the idea behind it was that it was unequal and we needed to encourage more women into Parliament. I mean, at the minute, MP Stella Creasy is making the point that she wants mums in Parliament because there are too many working mums that don't have access to childcare that have got amazing skills and could make fantastic MPs. So what we need to do is take away some of the barriers that stop women from entering politics. But what the story is really about is that there is a culture of blokishness in Parliament. I've been to loads of meetings there, I've worked there loads of times. It is extremely male feeling when you go in there, and it needs to be more welcoming to women.
But then shouldn't the selection process be more rigorous for those who are chosen to represent their constituencies? I agree with everything you've said. There is a blokish attitude to the Commons. I go there occasionally still, and you can still feel it in the air and all that. But what I'm saying is they've got to be educated at constituency level to appoint people, man or women, to go up there and act like normal human beings, not take any prejudices.
I suppose there'd be an argument to say, wouldn't there, Mike, that if the Commons was more open to women in terms of things like childcare and all that, then more women who would be good candidates would put themselves forward.
I totally agree. And also, women enter politics later because they've established their family situation and then they feel able when their children are young to get in. Men can start getting ready to get into politics, in local politics or working as a special advisor in Westminster from the age of about 21 when they leave university. So they've got an already standing start, if you see what I mean, on getting into Parliament. So that should be addressed. I totally agree with that.
Absolutely.
The opportunity to get into Parliament should be addressed, but not on the character of the individual to say, just because you're a woman, we're going to give you favourable treatment.
But that's not what Oliver Dowden is saying at all. He's not going to say that we're going to prefer women candidates. He says we need to encourage more women candidates and shift the numbers. That's very different.
There'd be a problem for a women-only shortlist, which is what the Labour Party
totally, which the Labour Party has done, and he's not suggesting that at all. So I think it's perfectly reasonable what he's saying, but I don't like the idea that he thinks by virtue of having more women around, behaviour will change.
Do we over-egg all of this? Only that Linda's been in touch. Morning to you, Linda, who says personally, this is about Neil Parish, I don't think he should have resigned. What he did was wrong. He should have apologised and been given a warning. But in the great scheme of things, it just wasn't that bad. Mobile phones should be banned in the chamber anyway. What do you think?
I just think, gosh, can you not control yourself? I mean, I don't know. I just think it's a very, very odd thing to do, given what we know about people's attitudes to porn. It's actually not about the rights and the wrongs of watching porn in general. It's about the context in which he did it. Anybody watching porn at work when they're meant to be doing the job should be in trouble.
But
I think that's just quite easy to understand.
There's a shocking arrogance about it.
Yeah, there is.
But people kept saying, oh, well, they shouldn't have been looking over his shoulder and all that. Don't you understand? The Commons are seats that go back like a football terrace, and any woman sitting behind him would have got a better view of what was going on his phone than he did himself.
Absolutely.
It was an outrageous thing to do.
Well, any man as well. It's not just women that are offended by porn. People are, and equally consenting adults like to watch it. So, it's the context that's the issue.
No, interesting, isn't it? It's an interesting issue, and it's good that we're talking about it, at least. Mike, let's have a look at Ukraine, should we, in the Sunday Express?
That's right. It says Putin's army of saboteurs target Britain. Now, a few months ago, you might have said this is a scare story, Red's under the bed and all that kind of stuff. But we know it's not a scare story, because A, we know Putin is a horribly ruthless man. We know that his war's gone terribly wrong, and we know that he's looking for an alternative opportunity to attack the West. And if he can't attack them with convoys of machinery rolling into the Ukraine because they get stopped in mud and they break down and all that, he's going to go elsewhere. And the elsewhere bit is what the MI5 and MI6 security services in this country are worried about. And it's no good saying, oh, well, it's all James Bond stuff. It's not James Bond stuff, is it? In this country, we've had Litvinenko, we've had the Salisbury poisonings. We know he is capable of it, and capable of far worse than he's already done. And we know he will resort to that because he's a ruthless, possibly unbalanced, desperate man. And therefore, this is raising the alarm that we've literally all got to be on our toes.
You see, it's interesting. We had former UN ambassador, UK's former UN ambassador, and then he was former national security advisor to the PMs between 2015 and 2017.
Yes.
And I asked him about this specifically, about threats to the UK, because actually it almost seems unbelievable. But then when you say you look at Novichok in Salisbury and Polonium-210 with Litvinenko, you think you can absolutely understand someone coming and just do it, and actually a proper terror attack in that sense.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Also, what this report says is in the Sunday Express, it might not necessarily be attack to kill and to cause damage. Humiliation is often a weapon in war. So, for instance, they cyber attack us, and all of a sudden Heathrow Airport is closed down. Do you see what I mean? It makes the country look weak. And remember also that this story is very serious because Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, has been identified by the Russian authorities as enemy number one to the Kremlin and to Putin. Therefore, we're probably top of the list.
Yeah. What do you think, Nikki?
Yeah, I mean, we have to be really careful. I mean, I think one of the things that really worries me is kind of cyber espionage and the amount of misinformation. You know, there's already so much about what happened during Brexit, and prior to that, I don't need to go on about all, you know, the idea of Russians infiltrating Facebook and giving us mixed messages about what's actually going on. But what I'm also very conscious of is us getting fearful of any Russians that are living in Britain right now and any kind of prejudice that might occur as a result of that. You know, it isn't everyday Russians. It's a very certain subset of people, and you probably will never encounter them, but it is good to be alert,
And that's a really interesting point. I'll tell you what infuriated me over the COVID situation was when people started attacking Chinese people, which is just disgusting. And so you've got to bear in mind that, you know, that we've all, I mean, I know one or two Russian people, I've come across Russian people throughout the course of my life. It's not them.
No, of course it's not.
It's nothing to do with them. So we've got to be really careful. You've got to temper your views with that.
But I think that has been made clear, Stephen. I mean, I've been to Russia about a dozen times. And I love it as a country, the culture, the buildings, the golden domes on the top of the Kremlin. And I love the Russian people for the way they have readjusted to, quotes, a free country, or it's not that free. I don't think anybody blames the Russian people themselves. I think they're as much a victim of Putin, aren't they, as everybody else?
Yeah, but do you know what?
It's easy to start having this anti-Russian feeling.
There are some parts of society that do just want to have a go.
Absolutely, and they're easy targets in many ways for Russians in Britain.
And that's totally unfair. It's totally unfair. Now, Nikki, in the Mail on Sunday, I thought I'd never say this again. We always used to talk about this donkeys years ago. The Lib Lab pack. That's right.
Back in the 70s. Okay, so apparently this exclusive from the Mail tells us that Labour and the Lib Dems are in cahoots to try and stop Boris Johnson at the next election by standing down MPs in constituencies where the other party might have a stronger hold. So this is according again to Oliver Dowden, who's been very busy this week.
Yeah, it's been busy.
And he's written this open letter to Keir Starmer and said, look, you're standing down MPs where you think there's more chance of Lib Dems winning, and Ed Davey's doing the same with his party, and it's to try and bring the Tories down. Well, I don't know if this is against the rules. I mean, he's criticising it as a strategy.
It's not against the rules.
So what's the problem? I mean, isn't that just very good politics? Isn't that just good tactics if you're the opposition? I kind of don't know how I feel about it.
Doesn't it show utter desperation from both Labour and the Liberals? To me, it's just utter desperation. Also, doesn't history tell us that once you start trying to gerrymander the vote anywhere, all started in Northern Ireland years ago, once you start trying to gerrymander, it usually goes horribly wrong and usually end up with something nobody anticipated or expected. I think what any party's got to do is concentrate on the strengths of your own party, try and press that message home and destroy the opposition, don't sidle up with them and try and create some sort of false premise that nobody really knows what they're voting for.
I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of appalling after everything that's gone on with the Tory party that Keir Starmer can't just win. I mean, the fact that he's still, when you look at the polls, they're still incredibly close looking at who they prefer as Prime Minister. He still has not capitalised on the losses of the Tories.
Definitely not.
So Labour is still not doing something right. It's not speaking to people.
Well,
they don't vote for Labour.
Surely it's him. Surely it's Keir Starmer, isn't it?
Well, it feels like it must be at this point.
If they had a leader with the charisma of Tony Blair now, they'd be 40 points ahead.
You'd
Instead
think
of
so.
they're 8 points ahead, and that won't get them a majority at the next election.
And he just can't persuade people. You know, he's got everything going for him on paper in terms of being a good leader, being honourable, charismatic, educated, but it doesn't translate. That's the point. I mean, on paper it looks like he should be, you know, extraordinary, but it just doesn't translate for people.
No, not at all. And he's got a problem with his deputy now, hasn't he? Who, you know, we all think has been hiding around in the shadows, waiting to leap into the void if Keir Starmer goes down. I think that's a big question mark now, isn't it?
But isn't that always when you have a deputy in politics? They could always potentially stab you in the back.
They could. I think she's having a few problems herself now, Ms. Rayner, isn't she? So I think she's going to have to look at herself rather than Keir Starmer.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because the old adage always says that parties don't win elections, governments lose.
Yes.
Now, in that sense, some sort of Lib Lab pact would be a sensible policy, wouldn't it? Because it'd be vote for anyone but the Tories.
Yes.
Which is what people do tactically.
Well, people do
that in local elections.
It's tactical voting. And yet, it seems, you know, there's a lot of people moaning about the Tories, there's a lot of stuff in the papers, but still, they're holding on to key support. People aren't ready to get rid of them
When you try to do this tactical stuff, I mean, you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're flying blind. Because the leaders of the parties might have come to some sort of a deal. Oh, you know, we won't push in that area, don't push. But does anybody tell the voters that this arrangement had been made?
And that's the last thing you want.
And if the voters don't know this arrangement's been made, they're going to change their voting intentions or their ability. And that's why, generally speaking, it normally goes terribly wrong.
Well, except if you want to vote Labour and there isn't a Labour candidate, then what do? I suppose you might vote Green or something.
But that's been tried in the past, and all that happens then is people don't vote. You know what I mean? And then again, you've corrupted our free and fair voting system. I think it should be against the law. I think this idea of you know, striking deals with other parties, it's gerrymandering.
What about constituency lines, Mike? Because that's something the Tories have continuously redrawn the boundaries of.
Well, everybody does.
You know, that's seen as completely fine as well. I mean, should we just carve up Britain in very equal segments, put every party representative in it, and then just see what happens?
Yeah, but it's not the Boundaries Commission that Boundaries Commission, they're an independent body, aren't they?
No, but it's very complicated again.
But it's all down to population changes.
Exactly.
So each MP is meant to have, you know, what is it, 70,000?
Something like that.
Something like 70,000.
Potential.
And so they keep redrawing the boundaries to make that fit. Yeah. It does get confusing.
Goes back.
But there's been, you know, we know over the years with, you know, the balance of different things, political parties often think, right, we've got to kind of get this boundary redrawn, and those things can win an election sometimes. So,
can we have a look, just because rather than the last story you picked, Mike, is a bit depressing, and I'm not saying it's not worth doing.
No, sure.
But can we just have a look, because Elle picked this out in the Sunday Express this morning. It's on the inside pages.
Yes.
And we both feel a bit uncomfortable about it. Angelina Jolie. Is, and I know she does a lot of work with the UN and things, but she's in Lviv, in Ukraine, where she's in a cafe, waving at the cameras, signing autographs. I find it uncomfortable, do you?
Right, it's not only in the Sunday Express, the Mail on Sunday have done a big page on it as well, because she's a very famous pop star. Now, I know what you're saying, she's cashing in on tragedy and, you know, promoting her own image, but actually, I feel that if she's bringing attention to the horrors of the situation, she's actually a force for good.
But is she? Is she just having a...
Well, if you look at her lifestyle and her background, she's done incredible work all around the world in all sorts of areas of charity work. She has a number of adopted children. I do believe that she tries to be a force for good in the world on the back of her fame. And I agree with you. When I first saw it, I thought... In fact, actually, there were a pile of tweets this morning, Stephen, absolutely right, from people saying, oh, God, it's just got worse in Ukraine. Angelina Jolie's turned up. So there is definitely a feeling of how you've just expressed it. But I quite admire her for, you know, actually getting, you know, out of the, you know, the bubble of Hollywood and all that and getting over there and having a presence.
What do you think, Nikki?
Do you know what? Me and Mike Parry agree for once. I actually think, I mean, if you've got a position to leverage to help, you should probably do that. It's probably your moral duty to do it, actually, when she's got so much influence, especially not just being a film star that's popping up there, somebody who has worked with the UN for years and years and years.
Yes.
But I also understand why it gets people's backs up. You know, is it taking attention away from the people that are suffering? If there's
Or is it
pictures
focusing?
in the paper, or is it focusing? Exactly.
Well, is it though? I mean, I think what made me uncomfortable with this is she is the special envoy for refugees for the UN. I think if we were seeing her in a refugee camp, that'd be one thing. She's in a cafe.
Yeah.
Signing autographs and
that's
taking
probably a safety
photos,
issue,
and
isn't
it's
it?
just, I don't know how comfortable I feel with that. And I do have a lot of time for her as a person,
Yes.
but it's just, you know,
If
time and place, I'm not sure.
if she didn't go, she would just be living in the Hollywood bubble, wouldn't she, at home, and not contributing
and
a lot
not
to the
leveraging her
world getting
influence.
better. But she has decided to, put her, her combat gear on, so to speak, get out there. She can make millions out of making another film, or go to Ukraine and try and highlight the horrors there.
You see,
So I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt.
You see, now this is what I like about everything that we do, because I wouldn't have thought I'd have bet £1 million, Mike, you would have said the opposite of that.
No.
And this is what is interesting, that people's views, and whether you agree with them or not, or whatever you think, also people's views are really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, people's different take on it all.
Ellie, think about it individually. Would you now put on your combat gear and get over to Ukraine and, you've got a very distinguished face and people know you there and all that kind of stuff, or would you balk at that and say, well, I don't want to take the attention away from those who are there suffering and I don't know what could I do? What would your view be on that?
Well, I don't know. I think if we were there in the capacity of journalists, you'd be there to tell people's stories. I mean, Angelina Jolie, this is my point. I mean, she is the envoy for refugees. If she was in a refugee camp telling stories and showing support in that way, I might understand. I mean, to me, if you can see this photo here, she had a beautiful coordinated outfit here and smiling and waving at the cameras. I'm just not sure. I don't know how much of that is personal gain or tokenistic.
But isn't it true, because we know this, we work in the business, famous people make other people feel better. They do, honestly. In any situation, if somebody walked through the door, supposing Rod Stewart walked in here now, we'd all feel much better,
I mean, Rod Stewart's
that's a good
fun
point.
as well, though. Extremely entertaining.
I don't know.
Extremely entertaining as Rod Stewart.
I've never met Rod Stewart. I don't know. Fluella Benjamin, on the other hand, would cheer me up very much.
Oh, yeah.
Fluella Benjamin.
Oh, Fluella Benjamin.
There you go, she's lovely. Look, thank you both. We'll catch up with you a bit later on.